Hello and welcome to this chapter. Here we'll see again some of the most common answers you will face in the Benoni, which is d4, knight f6, knight f3, and here again c5. Like recently I've been playing in this aim chess tournament, like this qualifier for only grandmasters or undetected players, and I was playing against Reyev, and I played against Tomaszewski as well, which are quite known as well, and they both played c3 and e3. So basically, what this means is that many people are not kind of these sharp variations of this complicated stuff, and they prefer to have something simple and take us out from our main ideas. So I feel this chapter is very much really important. Because some of the positions don't have the same flavor, and we will try to understand what's going on. First of all, I will consider some wrong variations. Let's say dc5, we just play e6, and we just want to take on c5. Here again, we have a couple ways to play. One is with b6, bishop b7, and then d5 to prevent ourselves from getting the isolated pawn. And then the other way would just to play d5, let's say h6, knight c6, castle, which is more like an isolated pawn version of it. So you have both choices. I know, it's just not dramatic. And if bishop a3, which is the only challenging move, like b4, never really works here, because after a5, c3, take, b6, this is a very common way to challenge this position. And basically we'll regain a pawn, and this is very healthy for black. And overall, I feel bishop e3 is not as much of a challenge. And also here I wanted to say that after here there is this idea of playing b5, but in general this is decent, like the queen gambit is accepted if the pawn is on d5, but here we still did not play that, and maybe d6, e5 is even stronger because our bishop is amazing here. It's just so solid. And we can play around the dark squares, which we have very much all the control, and also with the bishop on b7, we have the control on the light squares. So here bishop e3 was possible, and after knight a6, I mean, we just regained the pawn, let's say this position. And here, since I've already seen quite a lot of games playing this, I want to add that this b5 is super strong here. Like we prevent c4, and basically after queen b6, bishop b7, and we got all the control in the center, and we got all the control on the queen side thanks to b5. So again, I push for a bit more, and yeah, we can get already a good advantage. G3 is not especially good now, because again, we have played c5 directly, not with e6 first. So now we just take the pawn. And now white has a couple choices. White can play bishop g2, which is, this is known for being a move order that is quite subtle, that it's played in the Grunfeld, because white kind of waits for us to play knight c6, so then knight d4, and when we play e5 to get space in the center, white has an option to exchange this knight, so it doesn't need to lose the tempo here playing knight b3. So here bishop g2 is a possibility, but here we can play e5 straight away because there is this funny trick. I mean, if you don't know this trick, now listen me here, if you've never seen this trick, you should be practicing much more and doing more tactics than focusing on learning all the deep theory we have here. Just get the simple ideas, the c5, the e6, and then the strategy. And in this chapter, you can admire a lot of strategical concepts that are not necessarily related to the Benoni, but the structures that we can get into a game thanks to white playing more passive. But here c3, and again, we have an interesting position that if we take the pawn, white has some kind of compensation, because after bishop g5, we are not able to play d5 reliably, so white will have a hole here, and after knight d2, white has quite presence in the light squares. But here we have knight c6, which is a very intelligent way to give up the pawn already, so it makes you be a bit more creative, and now we just play e4 and d5, and we have an excellent French structure because the bishop on g2 is kind of useless. Yeah? And later on, after bishop d6 castle, we can just attack the king side with h5, I guess, and white is struggling to get into the game. So here the most convenient move is knight d4, but here, as we said, e4, e5 is possible in one go. If knight f3, we just develop, and then d5, bishop e7 castle, maybe h6 later, bishop e6, it's just so easy. We have all the center, and we develop all the pieces. And if knight b3, now d5, now against bishop g5 we have this very fancy move. which is only to play h6 later and to recapture with the knight, which is very interesting. And white cannot have enough pressure on d5. And against bishop g2, we play h6 now because we really want to play just knight c6 and have a comfortable development. Now knight c6, and after knight c3, bishop e6, we keep developing. And since we have an extended center here, we want to play knight c6 bishop here to just defend it well, and then we will be able to move this bishop. So don't hurry with castle, because we don't. I mean, doing both things is very difficult. Yeah, like we get space in the center, but then we need to pay attention to the center, and then we will castle. So it's a bit a different concept. And after e4, this was Caruana Carlsen actually. And now after d4, the position is terrible for white. Like this bishop doesn't play, this neither. And after knight d2, again, there's this theme when the knight is on b3 or g3 or b6 or a6 that you have a5 or h5 or h4 or a4. Yeah, so here a5 is great because it loosens up the knight. And for instance, against a4, here we have a great example. White wants to play c3. I mean, it's difficult to play c3 for many reasons. But c3, the problem is d3, that this knight is trapped, funnily enough. But here we would have as well queen b6. So it's to prove a point why putting those moves here with the knight on b3, it's excellent. And now this knight needs to retreat to d2, and now let's say we'll have time to play with d8, and this is just amazing position. Of course, omitting the fact that white is already losing a piece here, but just as the strategy concept, so for you to get it. And basically, this g3 is kind of a nonsense, and white also has knight c3, which is kind of creative. And the idea behind, I remember facing this many times when I was a kid, and it was very challenging because white wants to play queen d4, which is kind of weird, and after knight c6, queen h4. And white wants to quickly play bishop g5, castle. I mean, it's not that bad. I mean, it can be interesting and for black, but I feel it's very easy for white. And basically we got a very weird position from the opening, and white really is happy to get here, like to play some funny moves to get the queen out. And I don't know, white usually wants to to have fun in this variation. But here d5, and we transpose to the d5 lines we'll see, or we've seen against the Jobava London. So basically it's as if white plays d4, knight f6. No, let's show it. d4, knight f6, knight c3, and now we play d5, and white plays knight f3, and now we play c5. Yeah, so basically it's the same move order, so it's consistent. And now dc5, I mean, it's the only variation that it has some independent flavor. In case of e3, we just take and want to play this kind of position. The knight on c3 doesn't make any sense, and we will play bishop g4, e6, and we will play some kind of a queen's gambit position. So it's not that typical. It's like a Caracan, but the knight on c3 is not behaving well because it's ahead of the pawn structure, and now there is no possibility for white to get this pawn chain, which is ideal. And also white in this kind of structures, since we want to take out the bishop and then close the structure, usually in the Caracan, for instance, the Caracan exchange, white wants to create some annoyances to this bishop. But here, with this move order, there is no possibility of that. And after achieving this development success, later on we can just castle and maybe look forward to play, I don't know, knight d4 is possible on f5, or just having like a minery attack. I don't know what it's called in English, but it's some kind of thematic attack with a6, b5, and trying to pressure these 3 pawns with only 2, since we have a very nice center. I mean, it's very different from the Benoni, but obviously if white just defends d4 and doesn't play d5, we'll need to switch at some point. And yeah, okay, it feels very interesting for you to know this different kind of strategy and positions and why it works that way. I feel it's useful for you, and I hope it is. And against dc, here you only need to know that knight c6 is a bit smarter, because against e6 there is this theme that it's very interesting, which is e4. And if we were to take the pawn, let's say, and exchange the queens, now knight g5 is such an annoying thing, yeah, and we would be even worse here. So in order to prevent that, we can start with knight c6 first, and now in any case e4 is wrong because we have d4 and e5, and we take the pawn, and this is amazing position. So okay, we covered all all the trash, as I would like to say. And here we have a couple ideas. Against c3, here I have two interesting takes, which I already played. For instance, queen c7. I played against, for instance, Dreyev. Okay, queen c7, the only maybe worrisome idea might be d5, but okay, it's white lost already a tempo, and white didn't want to commit to d5, so we might be kind of happy already, like d5 is happening. We have also queen b6 with the same idea. Why queen c7? Because we prevent bishop g4, and we don't allow white to just develop normally. And as the sorry, as the London player would like to do. So here, I feel you have also some funny tricks here, which is after bishop g5. You would also go for knight d4, which is, I don't know, there is no need for that. And here d5. This is interesting. We get a space in the center, knight c6, bishop f5. We just develop all the pieces. And there is a funny trick here, which after cd4, let's assume white takes here, knight d4, and here we have this g5 idea, which actually, well, I just wanted to notice that this is a possibility of theme, because this diagonal is very weak, and now after taking queen a5 check, it's possible. And now we will retake here. I mean, it's more known when the opponent's on a3, because then I can just take and play here. But here it's, well, okay, it's just a funny side note. But this position is just very comfortable for black. And I don't know, just nothing to worry about. And the queen c7 is more a practical idea for London players. If you know your opponent plays the London, you can also play queen b6 with the same exact point. Like you just want to prevent the London. And then or bishop g5. And then d5, as you might guess, is the best, but okay, you can play a delayed Benoni. That's why I also gave the delayed Benoni, and you understand the concepts. And if white just plays normal, then you can go for g6, bishop g7 castle, and you get some kind of a safe position. And at some point, if white wants to play e4, maybe you want to play d5 and prevent it, and it's more than fine, yeah. Like here, for instance, well, yeah, queen c7, all this stuff. And here I also wanted to give e6 because I really love the idea. And maybe, well, as I say here in the written text, as a professional chess player, I want to suggest as well a very subtle move order that kills the spirit of the London in very few moves, and it's very reliable. Especially if you play d4, you will be familiar with these structures with black in this case. And after bishop f4, you want to play knight c6, and after e3, you want to play h6. The idea is you're threatening knight h5, so white needs to worry about the bishop. I mean, if you gain the bishop pair, it's already much more comfortable. So white played h3, and now you go shift to the main line. And after knight d2, you just play bishop d6, and basically you already managed to exchange the bishops. And maybe you're not familiar with this position, and you will say, okay, what does h3 and h6 exchange? So let's say we play the same position, and we play d5, and here we play bishop d6. Here white is quite happy to play bishop g3, and after bishop g3, hg3, and this rook is kind of active. And also this castle is a bit more healthy. So white is considered to be a bit happy here in these positions. Actually, we can even go further. I mean, this is a bit off topic, but for you to understand the idea, I feel it's very interesting. If you go to the Slav, you think, what's the Slav? I mean, the Slav, if you think about it, is somewhat like a London. Yeah, we already have the London here. So here, in this position, knight h4 is interesting, but bishop b4, and well, okay, it's a different game, yeah? Like f3, it's a different line. And here white sometimes plays bishop e2 in order to threaten knight h4, and sometimes white plays h6. And now bishop d3. This has been played by Magnus Carlsen, for instance, a couple times. And now you force the exchange and you have all the center, and this position is much more pleasant, let's say, for white. At least it's easier. You just want to play bishop d2 and eventually play for the center with e4. So yeah, I don't know, just want to use this chapter to explain a bit of theory and a bit of themes. And again, c3, again, you have this idea of e6, you have all these couple cheeky ideas to just prevent the London or even the Torre attack. And yeah, and we are left with e3. And here the same thing happens. Here we could also take and play d5, but this is a bit more complicated. This also resembles Dingley ran against Nepo, the idea with bishop b5. But this is like a Caro-Kann where white played knight f3 exchange, and then white played knight f3 and you play knight f6. So if you play the Caro-Kann, so this would fit very well in your repertoire. And obviously d5 should be fine, like white is a tempo up, but this king is accepted is kind of similar as well, so yeah. And g6 is a bit more, adding a bit more flavor into the position. Actually, I played this against Tomaszewski, and here we have many ideas. Against c3, let's say we can, this is a call system and white wants to play at some point e4. So here we play smart and we kind of kill the setup with b6 first, bishop b7 first. And now when white wants to play e4, we play d5. So again, it's not that we want to do something very specific, but we want to prevent the setup that white wants to do, or at least make the worst version of it. And here if white wants to play with f4, here you just need to know that knight e4 is always very strong, and playing f6, knight e6, and getting the square of e4 under control, but without allowing your opponent to get e5. Yeah, because if you play f5, it gets very dull. Yeah, and basically also bishop e2 is possible, and castle, now take on c5. This is more or less a Catalan with reverse colors, but here we could just play knight a6, which is a bit more creative. I mean, queen a5 should be fine, I guess. But here there are some ways that white can play queen d4. I'm not sure if this is the possibility, but usually white just wants to play like a Catalan. Yeah, and here you would be able to play with d6, b6, bishop b7, here rook fc8, and queen d8 to connect the rooks and to have the queen a bit more freedom. And this is very much safe. Yeah, actually I played something like this against Tomaszewski. But knight a6 is a bit more spicy, and now after bishop a6, I mean, white can also play this, which is a bit engine move-like, but okay, bishop b2 is coming, knight d4 is an answer to knight d4, so there is no worry for the a1 rook. And after bishop here, b6, this was played by Magnus recently in a classical game, so this should be fine, yeah? So, yeah, bishop a6 is the main line, white tries to get the pawn back, but okay, we have a lot of dynamics in our favor, and here let's say b4, otherwise, against b3 we have knight d4, and we would gain the rook. So here, b4, a5, and bishop a6, we pressure the rook, knight d4, we pressure the rook as well, and now knight d4 is the only move. a2 would lose the rook, c3 would lose the pawn, so basically knight d4, and now d6 is a very interesting concept. And we get the light squares under control after knight takes d6, and basically we'll play e5, and thanks to the pawn on e5 we control the dark squares, and white doesn't really have a flexible pawn structure that he can push, that he or she can push, and now we just, later on we'll just move the queen away, bring the rooks, and yeah, the position is very tricky. Actually, black is a bit better here already. So yeah, these kind of structures, okay, I would recommend you to keep it simple, but you know that you have some spicy ideas as well. You know? I mean, white can take already, and here knight a6 is not as good. But we have different instances where white can take here on c5, so here they are a bit different. So here the most typical plan is to play here on c4, and to include this, because if white tries to play this, the pawn on c2 would be a bit ugly, and later on, I mean, we don't even need to play d5, we can just play d6, d5, and make this bishop life miserable, yeah? And white cannot challenge our center with c4 anymore, so yeah, it's not as sufficient. But here we let's say take our chance and play knight d4, and we win the bishop pair. And again, this position is very well known in opposite colors, and here I just want to play castle d6, bishop d7, rook fc8. So basically we have both rooks here in order to at some point create a breakthrough, and then we bring back the queen to d8 to defend all our king side and just have a safe position. I mean, white is very safe, very solid, but we have many moves in our favor with bishop d7, rook fc8, like easy, and then at some point we want to push to the queen side, maybe a6, b5, maybe threaten this pawn, maybe, I don't know, just... Again, white is playing very safe, so, I mean, don't expect to crush the skull open. And after knight d2 and a3, this is the most typical plan as well, and white gets some space here, but we talked about it briefly just a bit before. We play more or less a similar way with a hedgehog system. And the knight on d2 is not ideal. White would love to have I don't know, very different configuration of pieces. Like the bishop here should be here. This 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 should be here. So basically, this shows like, okay, it's just a setup that white is nice statically, but has no dynamic pressure. There is no way like white goes through the center. We have all the control. We have both bishops pointing to the center. We have a very flexible pawn structure. I mean, we could even snag a win here. And yeah, and also there is the option of taking here, and you might be wondering, yeah, we saw that e6 is the move. Why not queen a5? Yeah, why not queen e5? Because in this case, only in this case, now knight c3 is a great answer. And here e4, and we get a very weird Sicilian-like position that we don't need to enter for, and actually it's tricky. Actually, white has some good ideas to go on. So there is no need to enter here. So yeah, so be careful a bit with how do you take the pawn. That would be my main take. And again, these lines, I mean, I'm not worrisome, but I feel this video is very important if you don't have much clue about theory with black, and if you started learning about how structures and stuff. And we talk a lot about different transpositions, different setups. Why do we have this very smart idea? Why do we have this very tricky situation? Why also understanding what is our opponent wanting to do. That's why we play queen b6 or queen c7. I don't know. It's not a chapter that will win you games, but it's a chapter that will learn how to think about openings and how your opponent wants to have a passive position, a solid position, how you can deal with it. And yeah, I don't know, just it happens that that your opponents play solid, but depending on what you know and what's your repertoire, as we talked about, the Caro-Kann, the playing with d4 with white, with reverse colors, if you are a d4 player, you get a lot of advantages if you think about it. So yeah, more or less it's a wrap of this chapter, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed a bit my explanations. And as usual, okay, I don't say it much often, but if you have any question, any doubt, please, it helps a lot to enrich the content of this website, and yeah, and also to me, because I play a lot of things that my students suggest. So see you in another video.